Tonight we have education and public safety. I think we'll start with education as per our agenda, so I'll ask Representative Whitney to come to the podium, please. Okay. Yeah, and I just have a request from the town clerk that when you make a motion or you second it, please raise your hand high because it's hard to note who it is. So just like make yourself known when you're doing those things. Thank you.
Thank you. So tonight I'm going to report out on two different meetings. The first one was held on April 25th, and that was before the town council had taken action, but it is informational. It helped us along in the process. So I'll read that first, and then we'll move to actually, the first one is April 4th, sorry about that. And then we'll move to the April 25th meeting where we actually did move budget numbers to recommend here. So, let me see. So for the RTM education meeting held on April 4th, the members in attendance were Representatives Whitney, Bailey, Bauer, Bordelon, Frickman, Gustafson, Quinn, and Rogers. One member was absent, Letitia Thompson, but we believe she resigned from the RTM at that point. Additional members, the RTM present were Eben, Newsom, Chase, Katowski, and Washington. Town Councilor Franco was there. Board of Education members Watson, Ackerman, Gelini, Newsom, Whiteloff, and White were there. And then from Groton Public Schools, Superintendent Grenier, Assistant Superintendent Austin, Business Manager Knight, Fitch High School Principal Arca Race, and Fitch High School Assistant Principal McGuire were present as well. The meeting was called to order at 6:05, and we had no unfinished business, and our only item of new business was the one on the agenda, which was the FYE 2019 budget, and that's account 1080 education, and also CIP 5A education. So I'll read now I'm reading from the report that we have, but this is verbatim. At the time of the meeting, the town council had not yet voted on the education budget number. Consequently, our committee did not discuss the number we will recommend. Superintendent Grenier described education budget details. The point-to-point budget description led by Superintendent Grenier largely followed his description at the April 2nd town council meeting. He also referred to his emailed answers sent to all RTM members, to written questions from town councilor Rita Schmidt, town councilor Joe Zippieri, and also Representative Whitney. Representative Rogers inquired about apparent reductions in music and physical education teachers as indicated by the budget. The differences are chiefly because this year's budget correctly moves the music teachers into the elementary budget and some physical education teachers who also teach health into the health part of the budget. Representative Bordelon, Frickman, and Newsom asked questions about school books. The school system is moving towards classroom collections instead of relying on media centers alone. At Fitch High School, they are working on making sure every student has individual access to the required books, but they have not reached that goal yet. This year, the Alliance and Department of Defense grants were used to fund the book expenses cut from last year's budget. Representative Whitney asked about the approximately 25% cuts to the school site budgets. Principals were directed to make these cuts, but could choose which part of the site budgets were reduced. Superintendent Grenier added that unexpended funds from this year may be used to partially offset next year's reductions by purchasing at the end of this year. Representative Katowski pointed out that the per student cost to Groton may be less for students attending out-of-district magnet schools than Groton schools. Superintendent Grenier pointed out that more students attending out-of-district magnet schools would not typically lead to staffing reductions and related budget savings because it would not result in a reduction of classes. Representatives Rogers and Newsom inquired about the International Baccalaureate IB program, student numbers, and efficacy. Currently, 318 high school students are enrolled in the IB classes, and 48 juniors and seniors are seeking IB diplomas. There are plans to add a career certificate option in the next 2 years. Next year, all middle school students will be involved in the IB middle years program. Representative Quinn raised the question of how the Alliance District designation indicates poor performance and will negatively affect real estate sales because families will choose to move into other towns. During the discussion, Representative Quinn also emphasized the need for advertising the strong positives of the school system to help draw people to Groton. Superintendent Grenier discussed the student enrollment history with the updated Section 3 of the education budget booklet that all RTM members received via email. In addition, he provided a handout with a table titled Teacher FTEs by School Year in response to Representative Gustafson's written questions. In that handout, the PSIS total enrollment roll is comparable to the total in building number on page 3-1 of the updated Section 3. Representative Bailey pointed out differences between the two tables, that the superintendent attributed taking the enrollment numbers from different points in the school years. The teachers row in the handout included classroom teachers, special education certified, media specialists, and guidance. Representative Bordelon, Frickman, and Whitney asked about class sizes. Principal Arcaresi distributed a handout summarizing class sizes at Fitch High School. The reported average class size in the various subjects ranges from 15 to 21. The superintendent expects balanced student enrollment numbers between the two middle schools as a result of the magnet programs. Concerns about increasing class sizes at elementary level also were discussed. Representative Frickman and Whitney raised concerns about the proposed budget changes presented by Superintendent Grenier and Town Manager Burt at the April 2nd Town Council meeting. They were tasked with presenting a reduced budget that brings the total down to the minimum budget requirement, MBR, and represent a 0% increase from this year. The Capital Improvement Project, CIP, for remedying lead-related water quality issues in some schools was not discussed. At 9:15, we adjourned, and that was unanimous.
So we have the first report on the table. Are you making a motion to accept?
A motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions, clarification? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes of the report of the April 4th RTM Education Committee meeting, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 30 in favor. None opposed. So read on for April 25th. And if you would, if you could just stop after you get to the first account, 1080, we can go over that and then go to the CIP after that.
Excellent, and I'll repeat the motion at that break point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is the April 25th meeting, and it was the members all were present, and additional RTM members, Eben, Newsom, and Chase. Mayor Patrice Grantowski was there, Board of Education member Robertson, and from Groton Public Schools, Superintendent Grenier and Director of Facilities Kilpatrick were also in attendance. The meeting was called to order at 6:04. There was no unfinished business, and again, the new business was one item, is the FYE 2019 budget continued, and that's account number 1080, education, and also CIP 5A, education. The motion by Representative Bailey to recommend $76,468,239 for account 1080 education, page 173 in the FYE 2019 budget. That was seconded by Representative Quinn. It was discussed, and it was approved 6-2 with no abstentions. Voting in favor were Bailey, Bauer, Bordelon, Gustafson, Quinn, and Whitney. Voting against were Frickman and Rogers. And I'll repeat that after I read the description of the discussion. The Board of Education and Town Manager's budget number is $78,317,747. The recommended number of $76,468,239 matches the Town Council approved number. is the same as the FYE 2018 and equals the minimum budget requirement. The superintendent described that reducing the budget by $1,849,508 from the manager's level to the council number could be met this year by cutting $51,500 from the maintenance budget, drawing $1 million from the health reserve, eliminating the $333,193 OPEB claims contribution, and drawing $464,815 from the Department of Defense supplemental impact aid funds. This strategy would avoid cuts to educational services beyond those already included in the education budget. The superintendent noted that the Board of Education has not yet adopted such a strategy, and the actual approach taken could be different from what he proposed. Implications of drawing down the health reserve and supplemental impact aid funds were discussed. Concerns about the budgeted reductions to school site budgets were raised. The superintendent stated that the projected $294,000 in unexpected funds from unexpended funds from FYE 2018 may be applied this year to offset site budget cuts for FYE 2019. The superintendent also said Groton has not yet received the promised $600,000 funds from the state to support Alliance District planning, but he will have an update on that in the coming weeks. The detail of the FYE 2019 budget and grants were further discussed. There are concerns about the years going forward. Particular concerns are future healthcare costs and the accumulated effect of multiple years without budget increases and cutting educational services. Many members feel that the same approach is unlikely to be enough next year, and approving the minimum budget requirement leaves little leeway for next year. And now I'd like to move what we recommended, and that is we move for account 1080 education, $76,468,239 for the FYE 2019 budget.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor for account 1080 education. It's been seconded, $76,468,239. Are there any questions or discussion? Representative Newsom?
I'm sorry, how much was there in unexpended funds from last year?
So that's from this current year, and it is at the time it was a projected $294,000.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? Representative Newsom?
Really? $76 million budget, no question? I have a question about the IB program. Are we advertising for the IB program yet for people from out of town? Have we decided?
We'd like to invite Superintendent
Dr.
Grenier.
And Dr. Grenier, please come up and join us and respond. Thank you so much.
We are in the process right now, the board, of establishing, we had an initial conversation about the tuition amount that would be charged for out-of-town students to participate in the IB program, and that's actually on the agenda for the next COW meeting. We are in contact with two families. I'm personally in contact with two families that are interested in having their children come to the IB program. We need to establish the fee to be, I think, before we can reasonably advertise it.
Thank you very much. Since it is the only IB program from here, that closest is what, Manchester? There's a lot of people I think would take part in that. Thank you.
Representative McDermott?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mike, I noticed that there's quite a change in our ratings in the schools on Zillow, which is probably the first option that people have when they want to come to town. And they're pretty good by and large, I would say. How many people do we have that are leaving the district to go down to London, for instance?
To New London Public Schools or any regional magnet?
The magnet schools and that ilk?
About 450.
So that's almost 10% of what we have here, huh?
Right. That includes Ledyard, VOAG program, marine science, and so forth.
Well, the reason I asked the question is I checked some of the ratings that come out of New London. They're pretty poor compared to what ours are.
Right.
Why would we not be able to counter that and keep the kids here, given that situation?
Well, some of the children go to a well-established magnet school, a regional multicultural magnet school. About 90 children actually go to it. That's a school run by Learn. A number of children go to the New London magnets, about 200. I think there are a number of factors. I've actually reached out to parents. In some cases, the school, I know some Coast Guard personnel who their children go to Winthrop School, which is right next door, 100% free and reduced lunch programs for all students. I think there are a number of factors, but we have definitely reversed the trend, and now we know, especially at the middle school level, students have already registered who either were in New London schools or other Learn schools. So, but, you know, of course, choice in southeastern Connecticut is a major factor of the Sheff versus O'Neill decision, and so the state supports that. And, you know, I've been saying all along, I certainly support choice. I just wanted Groton to be competitive, and so we certainly have become, especially at the middle school level, far more competitive.
Well, I know Charles Barnum is up to like a number 7 now, along with Northeast Academy and SB Butler, and high school has come up from where it was last year, from a 4 to a 5, and New London is like a 2. I mean, it's just hard for me to understand that we can't do better, but as long as we're on the road to making that happen, I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, you should see a press release tomorrow, but U.S. News and World Report just came out with their best high schools in America, and Fitch was in it again.
Well, that's terrific.
So, yeah, it's a good thing. So we have a press release tomorrow about that.
Good, thank you.
Congratulations. Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Dr. Grenier. I just wanted to double check on that 294. What are we looking at as a positive revenue for the end of this school year?
Well, our business manager did an update just on Monday, and we closed out some encumbrances. It's up to about $475,000.
Okay. And is that after you, did any money return back to any of the site budgets?
Yes.
So that's a positive revenue of 475 after money was returned to site budgets.
Correct.
I also had a question regarding how much money, I know there's been constant updates and it's ever changing with the medical insurance account. Where are we standing as of today on that?
We got our March report in, and the whole account is running about 88% of what was anticipated. So we, at this time, if the year ended at the current trend, and of course it's always a good guess to say that, but we would end with about $2.3 million in the so-called health reserve.
And where are we at in our DIA account? Where do we stand currently in that?
Do you mean the Department of Defense?
Yeah, the Department of
Supplemental
Defense.
Impact Aid?
Yeah.
About $990,000.
Thank you. And also, another question I had was the Alliance District. You know, we obviously are still in Alliance District. We were told we're still waiting on the money. Did any of the new scores come out yet? Are we still waiting on those for the next, that should have been coming out?
No, that won't be out until the fall.
Fall, okay.
But we did get a phone call and an email that the State Board of Education approved the plan for the commissioner to transfer funds to an appropriate account. So we anticipate we'll get this $600,000 by next week.
Okay.
That's the good news. The bad news is it has to be entirely expended by June 30th. So spending it in an intelligent manner is easy to spend $600,000, and just want to be sure you're spending it on the right things.
Considering that we're an Alliance district and our reading scores at Claude-Chester and several other schools, West Side's math and reading scores are quite low. Northeast Academy, not Northeast, Catherine Kolonowski is also struggling in a lot of areas. Children that are below, when I went to one of the Board of Ed meetings, there was, green, yellow,
Right,
and
right.
red, and I was amazed at the number of students that were performing in the red zone. How are we going to apply this money? Because once again, we can approve a number, but how you choose to spend that number is dependent upon your board and your, the directive of you and the superintendent, how you choose to move those funds. Right. So as a parent or as a member in this community, we can say, please fund remedial support, please fund this.
Right.
And once again, it depends on how you guys choose to move those numbers.
Right.
How do we plan to move forward to get out of this Alliance district?
Order, we're just really focusing on the budget for this year.
That's what I was questioning. I'm sorry if I went off on a tangent. So the money that's coming in from the Alliance district, the 600, how do we plan to bridge those gaps?
About a third of it has gone to staff members. We actually already hired those staff members. Those are remedial folks, and we were so committed. We just did it. So now we're going to pay ourselves back. About a third of it will be for classroom libraries for literature, guided literature, graded levels, and a third of it will be to support technology at the lower grades. One of the things that we're learning, quick footnote, is students are right now taking the SBAC test, and those of you who struggle with your computers might identify with a third grader who has to do 100% of his work typing and 100% of the math with a calculator that needs to be manipulated on the screen. So we clearly need to give our children practice. Part of the assessment is what they know. The other part of it is how they manipulate the technology. So we want to be sure we're putting technology in the hands of those children.
Thank you. So we're going to keep our questions on the motion on the table. Representative Rogers?
My question was just asked. Thank you.
Great. Representative Gustafson?
Mine actually was just answered too, but
Okay.
are you confident you'll have the 600,000 spent by the deadline?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Any other Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dr. Groton, do we have a number of students in comparison to what the defense is giving us for education funding, what the balance, the difference between the number of students that we have in District 4 going to school in comparison to what we're receiving in funding?
That's a sort of a complicated question. The simple answer is we get about $3,500 for every military dependent who lives in Balfour Beatty. We also get lesser funds for children whose parents work at EB, for example, and we get actually only a tiny amount, $185 per year for civilians who live in Balfour Beatty. But in the big picture, it's about $3.2 million that we get. That's the impact aid from the Federal Education Department. So that's for about, in round numbers, about 1,000 children. So at a per pupil expenditure of about $15,000 per child, that would be $15 million, and we get 3.2. But the state gives us about 5. So if you had the about the $3,500 plus the state's 5, that's $8,500. So another 7.5 have to be picked up by the town.
Thank you, Dr. Grenier.
Welcome.
Representative Whitehouse?
You mentioned, or a question was asked about kids coming into the International Baccalaureate program.
Potentially.
Okay, now how does, because I know we can't have a magnet school that draws kids in, so how does that work?
Unfortunately. No, that would simply mean that we would advertise parents, the parents who have contacted me, have experience in the IB program, but they live in other towns. So they would pay the tuition out of their pocket. Instead of going to a private school, they would simply come to us and.
Oh, so it'd be like being a private school.
Right, exactly.
And also, you mentioned about 10% of our students are leaving the town, but would you agree that part of that might be because they can't come back in, and that it might be that 400, is it 400?
About 400.
About 400 want to go to New London, but if it was more of an open system with more magnets, maybe 400 kids would want to come in from Ledyard, North Stonington, and
Oh,
and
certainly.
New London.
Right.
It's just simply because of the way the rules are.
Right.
We can't compensate for who's leaving by other kids coming back.
The state pays about $8,500 to New London for every student that attends New London. And so when I requested that at least Fitch High School be considered a magnet school, that children could come, because we don't have to build anything, the state said absolutely not, because they have a moratorium on magnets, because they can't afford the $8,500 payment to the school system.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, Representative Marshall?
I had a quick question concerning the difference in the town manager's number and the number for the town council. What are we not getting with the difference down to from 78 to 76 million? What is not going to happen?
Well,
in that case?
It's really, that's a question that the board's going to have to struggle with, but it's 1.8 million. And so one of the things that the board will take into consideration is that we do have an unexpended balance that could be used to offset that to some extent. There is a healthy reserve this year, a health insurance reserve that could be tapped to. We think we need approximately $10.5 million to appropriately fund our health insurance account. If the board only put $9.5 million in that, it would come out of the reserve. The problem with that is next year you only have $9.5 million, and presumably it's going to, if health insurance goes up, instead of needing $10.5 million next year, we might need, say, $11 million.
Yeah, I understand. What are the odds of the Board of Education have to come back to this body for more money partway through next year because of the fact that you're not getting what you need?
It is not in our plans, and I would say the chances are zero.
Okay.
So Representative Grenier, I see that you have set up a PowerPoint. I wasn't quite sure what kind of presentation you were going to make.
Well,
would it be helpful to this body to see this presentation?
I'm not sure. I've shown it before, and Chairman Watson is prepared. It kind of walks through the budget in about 5 minutes.
Is that Representative Bordelon?
Is this the same one we saw at the budget hearing that we had?
Very similar, updated, but similar.
I'll just take a soft vote then. Oh, sorry, Representative Whitney?
Actually, I'd like to recognize Board of Education Chair Watson, if she'd like to come up.
Oh, Representative Watson, would you like to come join us?
Sure.
I don't know, you're not a representative, you're a chair, board chair, Watson, sorry.
Sima, you can call me whatever you want.
All right, so is there, if you'd like to make any, I'm just wondering what the utility of this is, so I have a request to just, who would like to see this 5-minute presentation? Just, it's not an official vote, just like show your expression of interest. Who would not like to see it? Well, it's about tied. That means it fails according to Representative Newsom.
If I had to cast the vote that broke the tie, Mr. Whitney's explanation of those meetings really said everything.
Okay, well then we'll forego it.
I think you did a great job. I think
Thank you.
If you listen to the details of Mike's presentation, you got it.
Thank you. So is there any more discussion? Representative Frickman?
So I just wanted to clarify for the record that I did vote no in committee against this, but not because it's too much, mostly because I was concerned eventually, one day, this body's going to have to increase. We're going on, what, 3 years in a row at a zero, maybe 4? Is it 4? It's 4, right? 4 years at zero every year. So at one point, we are going to have to pay it back, especially if we're taking out of the DOD funds this year and the health insurance funds this year. So for the record, I just wanted that clarified.
Thank you. Representative Whitney, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Representative Marshall's question. As we noted, we've heard the superintendent's plans for how to meet the minimum budget requirement, which is quite a bit lower than the Board of Education approved number. I was wondering if the Board of Education had discussed that yet in any detail, plans for that yet, and if they substantially agreed with the guidelines laid out. You know, reducing the health, drawing from the health reserve, the DOD funds, et cetera.
Please, Chair Watson.
I'll take a stab at this, Mike, because we talked about this on Monday, so my memory is almost fresh. So, yeah, we did have a conversation, the board did, in just sort of in loose terms of understanding that in order to meet the 1.8 deficit, that we were going to have to take what we thought was a reasonable, without hurting us too much with the health reserve account. I think Dr. Grenier mentioned about, I think Representative Borderline asked about that 200,000 that we had in excess, and in new reports, it looks like it's about 400. And so I think that the Board of Ed is going to be seriously looking at whether we use those funds that are left over for this year to sort of help plug the 1.8 million versus go into the DOD grant, because I think that I can only speak for myself. We have not had a vote, but I think that by and large the board is very concerned about touching that grant. And so I think that is sort of where we landed, and there was some conversation about, I believe that Dr. Grenier and his staff kind of once again combed through the budget and came up possibly roughly with about $50,000 that we could also kind of take from the budget again. Once again, most of the fruit has been picked to get to do the 1.8. And so I think that that's sort of what we're looking at. And this year, I think that we feel very confident that with the grants that we have gotten for our educational purposes in terms of our language and our math, we do have a couple of other grants that are in the hopper that we're looking forward to receiving as well, that we're able to continue to produce the phenomenal district that this town has. My concern is, and Representative Frickman, is how do we move forward in terms of future years?
So that makes me question, is that DOD money that has $990,000 in it, is that earmarked for something? I don't understand the purpose of keeping it when there may be needs in the here and now.
Right. We get about $250,000 a year. In every year that about $250,000 is expended, typically on technology for students.
Is it an earmarked grant?
No, it's undesignated money, so it could hypothetically be used for anything. 4 or 5 years ago when I first got here, there's quite a bit because it hadn't been used, and so I recommended that we pay it down to about $1 million. It's the only rainy day fund that the board, in response to the question from Representative, that's where the board would go, frankly, if it was in deep trouble.
And is that in an interest-bearing account?
You know, I don't know. I hope so. Oh, good. So, somebody said yes. So.
Okay, and so that grant.
The money resides with the town, so.
That grant doesn't have a lifespan, like I actually do a lot of grants administrations, and ours are, you have to get a no-cost extension after.
As long as we have 20% military-dependent children, and we're hovering at about like 22%, so I'm always a little nervous that it won't come in. That's the other reluctance to use too much of it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so are there any other, let's see. Anyone who hasn't spoken yet? Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I was just wondering, Dr. Grenier, how the Board of Ed is going to work with the town to integrate into the Client First software initiative that the town is undergoing.
Yeah, we've been, especially our financial folks have been involved, and we are part of that. We've been tracking that all along.
I mean, but you are taking part in it. The board is going to come together with the town and use that software, right, at some point?
Yes, that's our intention.
Thank you.
Representative Rogers? Sorry, I guess you hadn't spoken. I have your name on the list, but you deferred.
No problem. I just wanted to clarify a question I think came up at our April 4th meeting, and that is, for background, the large increase in the proposed budget was because of health benefits. And I'm wondering about projections forward, if you have any pertaining to the growth in health benefit costs 2020 and beyond, and kind of goes back to this question of,
right,
are we kicking
right,
that can?
Yeah, the projection for next year is about 5%. We've been, well, of course, we're self-insured, and so the account has been relatively stable. In January, it spiked, and we were very concerned, and last month it dipped down again. So I think a reasonable projection of about 5%. So that's what I meant by when the board takes out $1 million this year to make this reduction, next year we're going to have to go from 10.5 million, and the employees contribute another 2 million, and retired employees contribute another 2 million. So it's a total $14 million account. But next year, when we have to go up 5%, we won't be going up from the board's 10.5 million. We'll be going up from 9.5 million. So again, the projection, I think the projection is reasonable, and there will still be approximately $1 million in the health reserve. Again, it's a question of responsibility, and some of you are here long enough that when I was here 5 years ago, that account was $1.4 million deficit. So we fixed it, and we've maintained it. So the board is really trying to be responsible with that number. But it would appear for next year, for sure, we will be okay. And when we come back next spring, there likely will be a slight increase in the health insurance. But of course, we have that $1 million hole to fill. So that'll be the challenge next year.
Representative Mello-Miller?
Thank you. Going off of Representative Rogers' question, I'm just curious, so we're talking 5% increase next year possibly, and I hate to ask you because this is education for our children, but what other ideas are floating around so that we don't have, the fourth year we're going down to this, what other ideas can we have to bring students in, to bring more money in? We have the International Baccalaureate, sorry. What else can we do? We're talking about maybe attracting other students in. Like, there's got to be more that we can be doing. And again, I hate to ask you as an educator to advertise and to kind of go into a public relations, but we have to start thinking outside the box, because as RTM members, we're also, I can also be public relations, and I can also be an accountant when I'm doing the numbers. And just as you are a teacher and an educator, what else can we do so that we can kind of protect our children, so that if we should have this again where we have a bunch of CIPs that need attention and need, bridges need to be built, et cetera, what can we do? What can we do as families? What can you do as educators to try to bring more money in, attracting more military? I mean, I'm a military spouse. My children are military children. What can we do to bring more military children in and attract them? These are great schools here.
So one thing to answer the question is when about 4 years ago, our magnet school tuition costs were about $2.8 million. With the adding of the magnet program at Northeast Academy, and as you know, we've gotten the 2 grants for the middle schools. We've actually been able to lower that tuition rate down to 2.0. So even though we have 400x amount of students leaving our district for the different schools in the county, we have been able to attract them back. One of the other initiatives that the board took very seriously is a couple of years ago, we did have someone, we actually have someone who works on grants, and that's actually how we've been able to get the 2 major grants that we have had. But we also have someone who is doing public relations for us, because I don't know if you've ever seen any of the advertisement for the New London magnet schools, but they're pretty. They're pretty, and they're glossy, and they're sexy, right? So, but we've also been trying to do that and go to all of those school fairs for families, and I know that a lot of military families go to those because they need to get exposure to what's happening in the community. So we have that. One of the deficits that we do have is that with the moratorium of having inter-magnet schools, we're not able to get other students from other schools to come to our magnet schools because we can only do the magnet schools within our own district. And I think that that's one of the things that ties our hands.
So just so I understand correctly, there's a limit on how many magnet schools can be in a certain area, or how does that work
Actually,
exactly?
let me clarify. There are 2 kinds of magnet schools. Inter-district, where students go between districts, and the state finances that. It's a huge program, hundreds of millions of dollars. So when students from Groton, Ledyard, and Stonington attend New London gets $8,500 per child for the children who attend New London public schools. The state decided to do inter-district magnets as a racial balancing. What we're talking about are intra-district. That is to say, the children within Groton have an opportunity now to go to 4 different schools. The 2 elementary schools, Catholic Kolnowski has been a magnet school for a long time. Northeast Academy, this will be its 3rd year as a magnet. And now the 2 middle schools are also magnets. So students from Mystic can go to a STEM program at Westside, and students from the city can go to Arts and Humanities School at Cutler. So that's one of the things in answer to your question. The second thing that I would say is it's the huge one is Groton 2020. I was talking to my son-in-law who was on the board in 2000, and he told me there were 14 schools in 2000. We are now down to 9. We will soon be down to 8 when we. So as we consolidate, we definitely have slightly well, I won't say slightly, we'll have more efficient schools. And so part of the operational impact of that is we've already taken 1 older building offline. We will take 2 very costly buildings offline when we build the 2 new elementary schools. And that will be a savings, but the 2 new elementary schools will have about 600 children each. And so that will give us an opportunity to have a little bit better consolidation and balance out class sizes, but it will be more efficient. And I think that's part of the big attraction of the Groton 2020 plan that is well on the way, and we are working hard with the architects to get this going.
Okay, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but just a suggestion as far as the rating scale, as coming from a military spouse, military children, we look at those ratings. When I bought my home, I looked at those ratings, and I know that there's a survey going around NEA, let's take the survey for NEA. What if not encouraging the parents that are so proud of their children going to these schools to rate them? That might be, again, free advertising that could be done. Right. Because, yeah, sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Casper?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I guess this question I have is probably more for Kim, but maybe not.
I'll give it
Old Lyme have a similar declining population. They lose students for some reason to other schools, and they only get, I think they have five tuition-paying students this year from outside. But they've budgeted $10,000 this year to begin an advertising campaign, and they are estimating and proposing $50,000 for the next year. Have you considered that?
Like I said, we have put someone in our employ, and she's about 20 hours. And she works closely with not only Dr. Grenier, but our assistant superintendent. In fact, she'll be responsible for the press release that will state that Fitch Senior High School was rated the 34th high school in the state of Connecticut. We are working pretty hard on that, and that has been one of the initiatives for the board to take.
Representative Wells?
You might consider reviving the Mystic Academy name. I know when I went there, everybody thought I went to a private school. And Mystic is got a good deal more currency now than at that time. And we changed the names on schools. William Seeley, he was the first to die at Pearl Harbor, and now there's, that school is no more. And so, we could, consider moving things around.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So has anyone like to speak who hasn't spoken yet? All right, Representative Bordelon.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you. I was going to say Representative Watson, because that's what we said. Sorry. And Dr. Grenier. A couple things. Just back to the refunding of the site budgets. I know at a lot of the meetings, or a few of the meetings, I know Northeast Academy in particular, parents spoke up about having underfunded instruments and the Northeast Academy Magnet School and Catherine Kolonowski not being fully funded. When we say the site budgets are going back to being refunded, are the magnet schools being refunded back to their set number?
Well, the site budgets for next year, one of the cost-cutting measures that the board took was the site budgets are going to be funded at only 75% for next year. So that amount, that's in the budget, and that's what we will, of course, plan to spend.
And then one of my last questions was in regards to, I know that we're looking at different programs that are college readiness, but I think one of the draws and the interest in the community is, children that are graduating, that are going right into the workforce. And one of the attraction sides with the Alliance money, with the DOD money, what are we doing with that money to, sustain those children that are going to these magnet schools for these trades because they can get hired at EB right away, making $60,000 right out of high school. So things like ROTC programs, is there any way that we could use some of that DODIA fund or those grants to fund programs like that to keep students in our district and utilize that avenue as well? That would help. We need to track not just the college readiness. We need to think of the students that are going right into the workforce. Thank you.
Yeah, the board is very concerned with that. We are trying to implement a more robust engineering draftsman program. We have a certified nursing assistant program. And I actually am in negotiations, well, not negotiations, I'm in contact to pursue a junior ROTC program. So I'll let you know. I know you had interest in that. I've reached out. The naval personnel who run that program actually is a Coast Guard officer, I'm proud to tell you. So we'll see if we can't get some coasties to run a naval ROTC program.
Representative Whitney?
I'd just like to echo what Representative Bordelon was saying about the site budgets. I understand they were cut by 25% in the budget put forward by the Board of Ed. But considering the unexpended funds that were a few weeks ago 294,000, now up to 475,000. I think there's enough there to restore a substantial amount to the site budgets. I understand that some of those cuts were offset by using the Alliance District fundings to buy some books, but I think it's still roughly 192,000 that could be restored to the site budgets. And that, since we're up to 475,000 in unexpended funds, I think that we could do that and still avoid large drawdowns from the supplemental impact aid. So
I think we agree. At least I agree, and I think the board.
yeah.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor, account 1080, 76,468,239. I haven't seen a hand go up in a while, so I think we're ready for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. You might want to stay there. We are going to discuss the next is a CIP. We'll do this one and then we'll take a break, okay?
All right.
Go for it.
And I'd like to invite Director of Facilities Kilpatrick up as well. Thank you. So again, I'll read the motion and our vote, and then I'll read the description and then move the number. So the motion by Representative Bailey to recommend $50,000 for CIP 5A education water service needs. That's page 122 or 222 in FYE 2019 budget. Seconded by Representative Gustafson. Discussed. Approved 6-1. No abstentions. Voting in favor, Representatives Bailey, Bauer, Bordelon, Frickman, Rogers, and Whitney. Voting against, Representative Quinn. Not present for the vote, Representative Gustafson. The recommended number equals the town manager's budget number. Because the town council zeroed this capital improvement fund, the RTM would need a 2/3 majority to approve anything above zero up to the recommended $50,000. This CIP is for the development of plans and specifications by an outside firm for correcting lead water problems in Claude Chester and Fitch High School. Unacceptable lead levels were found in one wing of each school several years ago. Drinking water has been turned off in these areas and bottled water is being supplied. Mitigation efforts have removed lead soldered fittings and replaced fixtures, but the lead problems remain. Plans and specifications for fixing the lead problems are prerequisites to secure state funding and have outside contractors complete the mitigation work. Director of Facilities Kilpatrick stated that the problems are beyond their internal capacity to fix at this point. Some representatives discussed the town council deliberations on the CIP and voiced disagreement with their zero funding decision. Concerns were raised about student and staff safety at these schools, even with the mitigation efforts to date. Many could not see why this has gone on so long without being resolved, especially since the health effects of lead are well known and children are particularly susceptible. Questions were raised about fixing Claude Chester since it is scheduled to close in 3 years. Many want to see additional lead testing to better safeguard student, teacher, and staff health. So with that, I move $50,000 for CIP 5A education water services needs.
Is there a second? Second. Tom. Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor, CIP 5A for water service needs, $50,000. It's been seconded. I'd like to open this up to discussion, and I'd like to introduce Mr. Kilpatrick. He's the head of, is it Facilities and Grounds? Thank you. If you have any questions. Representative Marshall?
Just a point of clarification. Wouldn't the first number be the town council's number of 0?
No, the RTM committee is recommending $50,000, so I will clarify, we will need a 2/3 vote to go above that town council. We are allowed to go above it, but it will need a 2/3 vote, which in this case is 20 votes in favor. Representative Bordelon.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Sam, for coming. I had a couple questions just about CIPs in general for the Board of Ed. Is that appropriate, Madam Moderator? Because I believe there was other CIPs, and I just had a quick question about that in conjunction to this one.
There's only
If not,
one
it's-
CIP.
I'll
for
stick to
this.
that. Thank you. I guess I can say what I was hinting at is the fact that I feel like these CIPs get lost. This was from 2 years ago, and I feel like it sat too long. Couldn't the Board of Ed or the direction of the superintendent use DODEA funding or anything to properly fund this? When the Old Town Council shot this down last year or 2 years ago or whenever, how come we didn't make efforts with the funds? Like, we're sitting here with a revenue of 400 and whatever, I don't have my paper, 400 something thousand dollars. Wouldn't it have been a responsible thing for this district in the education department to fund that and move forward to get the grants, even though it was shot down, and then resubmit our findings? I have concerns that it was not posted anywhere. Teachers didn't know. Parents weren't fully aware of, what fountains, what bathroom sinks weren't being cut off. And so I just want to address my concern as to how we handle this moving forward, that things like this are handled in a much more timely manner, because I feel like we could have funded this out of the budget that we currently have and maybe got the ball rolling sooner is all. Thank you.
So again, we're discussing the 50,000. So the next speaker I have is Representative Richards.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would just like some clarification. In the CIP, it says the next step in our mitigation plan is to change the fixtures affected in retest. Yet it says the FYE 19 funds are for the development of plans and specifications for water service needs. So is this actually changing fixtures and retesting? Is it new testing, or is it simply plans?
It's really the engineering study plans. We've already replaced the fixtures, and already the staff has done what it could. Actually, right now, we're in the middle of retesting again, literally as we speak. But the idea, maybe a little history would be helpful. In the spring of 16, you probably remember that the water in Flint, Michigan made national headlines, and so Mr. Kilpatrick and I approached the board and said, probably it might be a good idea. I don't know that there are any other districts in Connecticut who did that, but we thought it was the right thing to do, so we asked Groton Utilities to come in and test. And to Representative Bordelon's point, the board spent thousands of dollars to do that. And then when the results came in, we tested 55 sites. 3 of them proved to have levels above acceptable. And so we shut the water off at those 3 areas. And in one case, we simply it was a water fountain, we simply shut the water fountain off. In 2 other areas, one at Pleasant Valley School and one at Colchester, we provided bottled water, and that of course is another expense. And then retested, and unfortunately, those 3 areas still showed, they were better after the work that the staff had done, but still problematic. So we continued to provide bottled water, but immediately put in a CIP request in the fall of 16, which then was rejected last spring. And then we resubmitted it again, and all that time, of course, we closed Pleasant Valley School, but we have continued to provide bottled water to Colchester School. So we think it's an important thing, and I know it's received a fair amount of attention, and I would strongly encourage the RTM to fund this. This year is a $50,000 study, and the CIP for next year, if you look, you'll see it's that's when the work would be done, once the engineers can tell us what they think the source is. We know the water coming in is acceptable. It's pure water coming in. The problem is not Groton Utilities, but we would really like to address this. And of course, the board will continue to provide bottled water at not an insignificant cost. So we really, sooner or later, we need to get this done.
In addition, I was wondering, I understand that the testing was done in different spots, but not everywhere within
Right.
the schools.
Right.
In the areas where lead was found, have the surrounding water sources been tested because they may share the same pipes?
No. We only tested the 55 sites and where we saw there were problems. There were water sources adjacent that were fine. There were some, in some cases, a fountain had lead and one nearby didn't. But no, we did. To test, and we've been toying with the idea of testing virtually every source. It'd be about $75,000.
So would the 50,000 include testing the areas around the ones that have already been shown as positive?
Well, the board, right now the testing is going on, and that will be funded through the board's operational budget. The CIP would be to do the engineering study to help address it, and then the following next year CIP would hopefully be to do the actual construction work needed.
So is there a plan to test the areas near the ones that have tested positive?
Yes, we're doing more extensive testing now.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Whitehouse?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So the CIP here says in 2019, it would be for developing plans for Claude, Chester, and Fitch, and then 2020 would be for the construction of updated water service in Fitch. So why are we developing plans for two schools and then executing plans in one school?
We would do both. Yeah,
Okay.
We need to refine that, I'm sorry.
And Claude Chester is closing in 3
Closing
years?
potentially in 3 years.
Okay. And how much will it cost? How much will each school cost, or is that not known?
Not known.
It's estimated that between them it should be about 150.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Representative Monahan? Representative Streeter?
I kind of respectfully disagree with the town council with this, and I do support the $50,000. Although the Claude Chester School will be closing, possibly closing in 3 years, all right, our children are still exposed to it, one. Number two, there are no future plans that I'm aware of that we're going to eliminate the school afterwards, that it may be used for future use by recreation or some other type of activity. So my suggestion is that we do this now, while these people are being exposed to this, and rightfully so, parents are upset about it. I would be concerned about it also if my children were still in school. So I'm going to support the $50,000.
Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. For the testing, do you have to let the water sit for a certain period of time before it gets tested, or
It has to sit there for at least 6 hours.
why is that?
Well, what they do is they want to determine what the level of lead is, if there is lead in the stagnant water, and then you run it for 5 or 10 minutes, you flush the system, and you take it again. So that's the protocol that is used for testing of water.
So what does it look like after it's been run for 5 minutes?
Well, in some cases, it still contains the lead. Well, in these 2 cases, they still contain lead.
So we've replaced the fittings in every place where we think there's lead solder, and we still can't determine where it's coming from.
Right.
Like I said, I want to support this because it's important for the health of our kids, but right now, this sounds like a science project. It sounds like you guys don't really know what you want to do. The $50,000, I'm not sure that's an accurate estimate, and certainly $150,000 to do the work, because you don't know what work's got to get done. I mean, there's
Right.
You haven't defined the parameters. You haven't isolated anything. You don't know what work has to be done. So putting together an engineering estimate to do work that we don't know what has to be done, it doesn't seem to make sense. It seems like there's still additional work that has to be done so that this can get the parameters can kind of get defined, we can put this thing into a box, and then we can fix it. But right now, I won't be supporting $50,000. I don't think we're ready to do the work.
Representative Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have a question for the superintendent. As far as exposure, we have water dispensers, so they're not being exposed. Is that correct?
Yes, that is, right now it is, yes.
And it's about what, about like $1,000 a year for supply of the?
For the one school, Colchester, but we have since provided bottled water at the high school that we feel more comfortable with, and that's that will well exceed 1,000.
So currently, what will we be paying for water? Alternate means of water.
For the high school? About $3,600 for the high school.
A year?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to make a motion to move the number.
Okay, we have a motion to call the question. All in favor? Oh, sorry.
I heard someone second. Somebody seconded that one.
All in favor? What? Aye. Any opposed? You need 2/3 to move the question. How much?
Yeah, 13.
Can you say more than that? Sorry. 17 in favor, or any abstentions? 17 in favor, 13 opposed, no abstentions. That motion fails, because I believe we need 2/3. Is that correct?
No, 17 in favor.
We need 2/3.
No, this is moving the question.
To move the question, you need 2/3.
Don't we need? I know, to end debate, you need a 2/3 vote.
That's right. It takes 2/3.
My,
Yes. He said.
He said move the question. He said move 50,000.
you need 2/3 to end debate, too.
Yes, we do. And he said move the question.
I'm sorry, I'm really confused here. So we just had a vote on moving the question. It was 17 in favor, 13 opposed. You need 2/3 in favor. I don't believe we have 2/3.
Right.
So
we're
it
still
fails.
debating. We're still debating.
Thank you. We're all on the same page here, right?
17 in favor.
Yes.
13 opposed.
Right, so we don't have
No,
2/3 in
I-
favor. So that motion
hand is up
fails. So I'm going to call on Representative Marshall.
This is a straightforward question. Does this have to be a CP, or can the Board of Education pay for it on its own? Like, does this have to be a capital improvement project? Is there something preventing money? Okay,
Right.
so I need, this needs to get fixed, and I think it needs to get fixed now. And I think you guys need to, I think you guys need to take care of it. And probably should have already taken care of it already.
Right.
And I understand there's a lot going on. This is a seemingly small amount of budget, but this is a really serious issue. So I want to see this regardless of if this doesn't pass, this needs to get done this year. It needs to start on this. And I'm going to support the $50,000, but I don't think we should be waiting for things outside of your control. I'd rather you overrun your budget for this little bit amount of money to fix this kind of problem and put it to bed. That's where I stand, and that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, so several of you have spoken, at least once. Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mike, the thought occurs to me that if we're talking about a possible $200,000 and we only have 2 or 3 sites, Why don't we just shut the water off to those sites that are affected and run new lines in from the unaffected sites?
Well, that-
Just a new copper line.
Right, right. That is exactly the sort of advice that we're hoping from a water engineer.
We have to go through all of that to make that kind of a determination.
Some of the pipes are encased in concrete. It's a little bit more complicated, I think. And look, you know me with engineering.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
Representative Gustafson.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm not sure if you answered this question, but were the bathroom sinks tested?
Some of them, yes.
And they were tested positive, or?
The one, yes, the one at Colchester School is, well, it's actually a nurse's office sink.
Okay.
But there were some bathrooms.
So throughout the school, the bathrooms that all the kids might use, have like every sink been tested? I
No,
guess
no,
is-
not every sink. We only tested 55. There are probably 600 in the system.
So theoretically, kids could be using those sinks, getting exposed. Like,
Right.
I know if they're coming from recess or gym,
Right.
something gonna stick their heads in
Yes.
the water and they're
Yes.
gonna cool off. So
Yes.
I'm in full support of the $50,000. There's no safe blood threshold for lead. Obviously, elementary school kids are more susceptible than that than older adults would be. You know, it affects their cognitive development. So I'm definitely in favor for that. Thanks.
Representative Whitney.
Yeah, so I've, on the committee, of course, but I also have strong personal feelings on this. I think at bare minimum, we should provide for the safety of our children in schools and the people that work there. And I must say, lead at unacceptable waters in the schools. If we don't fund this, why are we funding so many other things? And so let's have a little perspective here. $50,000 is not going to move our mill rate one way or the other, so that's not an issue here. We agreed on $50,000 to improve our website. I believe that was the town council number, but was not requested. So $50,000 to improve our town's virtual environment. And we need to support $50,000 to start to fix problems in our kids' physical environment. And I gotta say, Fitch High School is going to be around, and we want to use it for a long time. Colchester probably is going to be around even after it's a school and be used, as Representative Streeter said. And right now, that wing, although parts have been shut off, other parts haven't been tested, and it's probably got that same line that's causing the problems. And it's not just the fixtures, we know that. That's a kindergarten wing, a kindergarten wing. So if you care about our children, we should support this. If you care about how we look as a town, you should support this. And in terms of not knowing enough, that's why we're doing the planning at this point. And we don't know everything that's going to happen with the bridge to Groton Long Point, but we know enough to know we need a new one. That bridge, everyone said, hey, it's like 30 years old or 80 years old, who knows? But these water lines are equally that old. This is a good investment on our future, and for me, an easy decision to make. As an RTM, we are representing our town, and this is part of the use of the RTM to correct for decisions that the town council made that we don't see as in the best interest of our towns. So I urge you all to vote in favor of this so that we can get this passed and get the process started that should have been started a couple of years ago at least. Thank you.
So I have Representative Frickman.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I do agree on the number. I also will add, I think this is our responsibility. I don't think this is the responsibility of the school to take it out of their own budget. I don't agree with taking out of a budget for something like that. So I fully support the $50,000, and yeah, I don't know why we're still debating.
Representative Adams.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I was wondering, since we have members of the Town Council here, if we can get a rationale on why they moved zero. Is that possible?
Yes, I'll ask Mayor Granatowski to come up and perhaps address that. Thank you.
I'm probably not the right person to ask because I actually voted for funding this. So I agree with all of you, and
Your chair spoke very eloquently as to the reasons why you should be funding this. But we also have Councilor Parker here, and she can speak on the opposing side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Parker.
For me, I wanted more information. I wanted a retesting because you changed the pipes at the meeting. This was stated. The pipes were changed, but they didn't retest again. So I had a problem with spending the $50,000 not making sure that the water was retested from 2016. It's 2018. It should have been retested before the kids started school. That was my concern. I said, well, we need to go back to the drawing board before we put the $50,000 forward because it may have fixed the problem. We don't know. So it was requested of the Board of Ed to go back and get a retest done. I don't know what the other thoughts were for the rest of the group, but that was my concern is, can we go back?
Just a point of clarification, and my apologies for poor communication. We did test, it did show positive, we did do the work, and we
In
did test again.
2016.
Right, we tested after the first testing.
Not according to the paperwork you gave us. That's why I asked for another test when you guys sent us the paperwork.
Well, hence my apology. We tested twice in the spring.
In the spring of 2017, but
And
before.
then in August.
That's not what was told to us. That's why I have a problem with the.
Well, I provided an
and
update
I
to the
believe
town
several-
council, and that was in the town council's,
But
in my memo.
No, because there were several RTM members there, if I remember incorrectly, that's what we heard, that was what was given to us.
I apologize. We tested in April of 16. We did the work in the summer. We tested again in August of 16. Those were slightly improved, I've said before, but not acceptable levels.
Representative Merritt? I'm only calling on people who haven't spoken yet because a lot of you have spoken. I'd like to have everyone have the opportunity to speak on this if they like. So please, if you've already spoken, I may not call on you. It's already 9:30. I'd like to finish the agenda tonight.
But you made adjustments and then you retested?
Correct.
And you still had unacceptable levels?
Correct.
Has any consultation been made with the provider of the water?
Yes.
And what did they say?
Well, we tested the water. We know the water coming in immediately into the school is acceptable. So we know that the Groton Utilities water is, all that we're getting is acceptable.
Representative Bauer?
Thank you. What I want to say is that before, once we had the bad water up north, and now if we have it here, and it's a small problem, but it's a very important problem, we can't wait until half the town has got bad water because of something that's wrong with the pipes themselves that are put into the schools. So I'm very much in favor of taking care of it. We should have, hopefully, we won't have another problem. But if we do, we should get the information sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Councilor Atwater, would you like to address? Sorry, Representative Bauer didn't mean to.
I guess I'm speaking maybe as much for myself, but I would like to say that the council, I think in general, felt that rather than spending the $50,000 to do a study, that the money should have been spent immediately to remedy the problem. That to go for 2 years before the council asking for money to do a study was not the way to approach it. One of the councilors gave some engineering thoughts on how to do it. One member in the audience told the manager that he could get records of where the pipe was from the state because some of the records were lost in a fire in the town. So I guess I'd like to just say that it wasn't that we were trying to save $50,000. It was more that we felt that it should have moved forward 2 years ago and not being put off and put off. And that's,
Thank you. Representative Wells?
Well, I think, this study may point up some of this, but everybody keeps talking about the pipes, where they are, the walls, and so on. you know, one option in a modern plumbing solution is to use PEX. It's a plastic flexible tubing, and you drill a hole in the wall and you fish it through like fishing an electrical wire. So they can leave the existing pipes where they are, and the connections are not soldered, they're crimped. And so it's easy to bypass the pipe. You don't have to blow the building up to get the pipe out and put another pipe in place. But, you know, you don't want to be just willy-nilly, you know, bypassing pipes. You want to know which ones you want to pinpoint them.
All right, so is there anyone who has not yet spoken on this issue who would like to speak?
I'd just like to say, I appreciate the town councilor's comments.
I didn't call on you, I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought you did.
No.
Oh, I thought you looked
I
at
will
me.
recognize you verbally. There's a lot of people who want to speak a second time, and I would really like to kind of wrap this up at some point, but Representative Mello Miller, you haven't spoken yet.
I'm sorry, I just want clarification, because I'm not sure which way to go on this yet. So so this was discovered in 2016, and it was brought as a CIP last year. I know that you said the water is being tested, I'll stand up, the water was being tested currently. When's the last time previous to now that it's been tested?
August of 16. After we did the work during that summer.
So it's been 18 months. So there was positive lead, and you tested 55 of 600. And I'm not sure, is that, maybe someone else can answer this, is that typical to only test a sampling of the water? Or like, wouldn't it make sense that if you found lead in 3 of the fountains or whatever, that you would want to test more?
Right. Well, the typical answer is, I know of no other school system in Connecticut that's tested the water. So we, in consultation with Groton Utilities, tested those fountains that they thought would be a representative sample around the district.
Okay, so to be fair, I want to say I don't think we should punish previous RTMs or previous councils for their decisions, but I do feel, I mean, there has been a failure on different parts of this. So just to recap, it hasn't been tested, so 18 months have gone by, and it's just now being tested again when we knew this was coming up for a vote.
That's right. We're still providing the bottled water.
Thank you.
So is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet who would like to speak on this issue? Right, Representative Katowski.
Make it quick right now. I have to just say, this is the 4th time I have heard a presentation about this subject. Once from the Buildings and Grounds Director, once from the Buildings and Grounds Director and the Assistant Superintendent, once from the Buildings and Grounds Director and Dr. Grainer, and now tonight. And the information just keeps changing. And I don't think, I'm not going to support this, but I'm not going to move 0. But I just think that $50,000 for another study is a waste of money. Thank you. And I also kind of agree with a lot of the people that have commented that we weren't doing the right thing for 2 years to try to solve this problem. So I just hope moving forward that we get our act together a little bit more. You know, and I've been a mentor at Gloucester for 10 years, and I want nothing but the best for the kids there. So I'm not going to support the number, but I want it to get fixed, and hopefully that we can get a plumber to fix it.
All right, are we ready to vote on this? Representative Whitney?
I'd just like to...
These are all the second times and your final time. Just know, my patience, we really have to move on. Some people have spoken quite a bit. So please keep your comments brief.
I will. I'd just like to say that, you know, we really should have moved forward on this. And I don't understand how not supporting this emphasized that. We should support this and do this now. And the other part is this planning is a prerequisite for both getting the work done and applying for state funding to support this. And as far as hiring a plumber, this is not something typical for your house. This is a school, this is old construction, and it's something that urgently needs to get fixed. Thank you.
Representative Monahan? That's right, you called the question. I have him down.
I'm going to support the $50,000. I think we need to figure this out. I mean, we get kudos for doing the test because nobody else in the state did it, and we found the problem. I guess the thing that I'm wondering is we found a problem, and we only did a sampling. Why wouldn't we do all of them? I don't know. But I think, and the other frustration about moving the question is, to me, $50,000 isn't a lot of money in terms of the total budget. I think it's pretty clear what the right thing is, although obviously a lot of opposition. But I think we should support this.
Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm sorry about your patience, but the body voted to keep on speaking. So now, I still think that we need more testing done because we need to isolate the problem so that we can do a study on what needs to be done so we can fix the problem. But right now, we haven't isolated the problem. You don't know where the problem is, and doing a study is not going to tell you. More testing and isolating and figuring out what the source of the problem will help. So you're not ready to move forward.
We're doing the testing right now.
You're doing the testing now, 18 months later, after finding out that you had an issue.
Right.
I move the town council motion for the figure of 0.
All right, we have a motion on the floor of 0 and a second. I want to remind all the members here to use decorum when they're speaking and addressing everyone. So please, we did make a motion we did defeat a motion to call the question, but you are limited to 2, and if you read Robert's rules, I am keeping track. We have a new motion on the floor, however, so Representative Whitehouse, we can be here all night, that's fine.
All right, so my concern isn't so much the test, because it sounds like we tested the right times before and after action, but if there's 600 fixtures, and we tested 55 and found 3, it's been a while since I took statistics, but that would tell me that there's approximately 36 fixtures somewhere in the system that have lead levels, and we don't know where 33 of them are. So we're going to spend $200,000 to fix the 3 we know about, while still having 33 more somewhere in the school system that we don't know where they are. And it is good that we tested, because every other town around us probably also has 30 fixtures with unacceptable lead levels that they just don't know about. And ignorance is certainly not bliss when your children are drinking lead water. But are there any plans to test the other 550? Yeah. The other 550 fixtures to figure out where the other hidden lead contaminations are?
Yeah, we're doing much more extensive testing now.
Okay, so you will be testing all the fixtures across the system?
No,
or all the water fountains?
Well, we're going to have to. We are working with the water testers right now. It would be as I said before, it'd be a pretty formidable number. It'd be 65,000 just to test. So that's problematic. So what we're going to do is we're going to rely on the testing. We're working with the State Health Department and Ledgelight, and they'll give us some reasonable guidance. But for example, we know at the high school, the new building, 100% of the fountains tested acceptable. So I think we're probably good there, but we're going to do more extensive testing in the older part of the building. Right. I'm confident that we can, within reason, back to your statistics, get to a reasonable number which will give us assurance of where we are. And then that information will be shared with the engineers to try to figure out how to resolve the problem.
Okay, and so with this 50,000 and then the 150,000 to execute it afterwards, it is your belief that that will eliminate lead in any of the water that any of our children will be encountering?
That's the goal, absolutely.
Okay, because my concern is this wouldn't actually solve the problem. Then we'd have to have another in the future. But do you believe this 200,000 will solve it completely?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you.
Representative Hanscom.
Thanks, Madam Moderator. I believe we're all in agreement that this is something that needs to be fixed. I think part of what we're getting stuck on is all the process. And my question is, just to clarify, so the $50,000 is it for someone to come in and to evaluate sort of what our problem really is on an engineering level
Yeah.
and figure out what needs to be done to fix it, because I know that's something that, like, a plumber can't just go in and,
Right.
you know, so that $50,000 is sort of a prerequisite for spending the proper amount of money to fix it. Is there also would that take a whole year in and of itself? Is there a way also to do the $50,000 to review it and then, you know, consider fixing it also in this current year? But those are my 2 points. One is just the process. I think we're getting confused.
The first part of your observation is yes, absolutely. The money will be used for an engineer to try to identify the source of the problem and to design plans and specifications to take care of it. And then the plan would be, you know, unless the testing results in some sort of catastrophic situation where we would come back, but the plan would be next year we would do the construction and provide bottled water. Of course, wherever we find a water source that is not acceptable, we will provide bottled water at that site.
Do you have a follow-up question or just a comment? I think that process to me sounds reasonable, and I would encourage other RTM members to support that. Thanks.
Representative Bordelon, did you have your hand up?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator. The other thing that comes to mind with this is that when we're retesting all the sites, that we also maybe should label, even if other fountains in that building were not identified as having lead in them, that the sinks are not for drinking, and labeling throughout the school for staff, children, other people that may use the building. And another point was also brought to my attention is also that you say allowable level. What is that allowable level? What did they tell you that number was? And at that number, moving forward, what is our action plan to retest these fountains and sinks that have allowable levels? Because at any point they can break down to not allowable. So it's not, I'm sure you've found some allowable levels, which is still lead coming in, and that still needs to be followed. So there needs to be flagged and followed and reported on and showing that you're retesting as well. Those are the things that come to mind, is making sure everything is posted. So thank you.
Mr. Grenier?
Yeah, I was going to say the allowable, the level, the action level at which the water needs to be remediated is 0.015 parts per billion. We did have one fountain that was 0.011, which was not actionable, but it was of concern, and that was one of them. We just shut it off.
Is there an action plan to follow? It's only one. So only one fountain was found with allowable levels, is what you're saying?
Only one with one fountain. That fountain was actually shut off, and it's the nurse's office. Not a fountain. It's a sink.
Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. You just said that it will cost $65,000 to test all remaining water sources?
Virtually every one, yes.
At a previous meeting, I've been to so many, so I don't know if it was a council meeting, you had stated that Groton Utilities was doing it for free. Has that changed?
Oh, no, I misstated if I said that. I'm sorry. It costs about $130 per, because they do it, but then it has to be sent to a lab and is tested at the lab.
All right, thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. I don't see any more hands. The motion is 0. This is CIP 5A, Education Water Services, and we're going to take a roll call vote on this. This is a 50-50. This only needs 50% to pass.
Correct. Adams? Yes. Bailey?
Yes.
Bauer?
We're zero. This is 0. Sorry.
No.
Did I not say that?
Bordelon?
No.
Casper?
No.
Chase?
Yes.
Frickman?
No.
Gustafson?
No.
Henscom?
No.
Gutowski?
Yes.
Marshall?
No.
Martin?
No.
McDermott?
He left the room.
Is he gone, or just left?
I think he just
Okay,
left
all right.
momentarily.
Melendez?
No.
McDermott? Yes or no on 0? Mello Miller?
No.
Merritt?
No.
Monahan?
No.
Newsom?
Yes.
Pacini?
Puccini?
Oh, sorry,
Pacino,
Pacino.
sorry.
Oh, I put an A on the end, I'm so sorry. Pacino?
You said no.
Okay. Perry?
No.
Powers?
No.
Richards?
No.
Rogers?
No.
Streeter, Irma?
No.
James Streeter?
No.
Strode?
No.
Wells?
No.
Whitehouse?
No.
Whitney?
No.
Eben?
No.
Did someone leave?
No, someone came back.
Yeah. Oh. That's right. 25 no. 5 yes, 25 no.
So 5 in favor, 25 opposed, no abstentions. That motion fails. We have another motion on the floor for 50,000. Do you want to do that as a roll call vote? This does take 2/3 vote to pass.
We need 20 in favor.
Which is 20.
Yeah, better take it. Adams?
Abstain.
Bauer?
Yes.
Oh, Bailey?
No.
Bordelon?
Yes.
I got her. She said no, she said yes. Casper?
Yes.
Chase?
No.
Frickman?
Yes.
Gustafson?
Yes.
Hanscom?
Yes.
Gutowski?
No.
Marshall?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
McDermott?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Miller Mallor?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
Newsom?
No.
Pacino?
Yes.
Perry?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Rogers?
Yes.
Irma Streeter?
Yes.
James Streeter?
Yes.
Strode?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Whitehouse?
Yes.
Eben?
Yes. You forgot Whitney, I think.
Whitney?
Yes.
You better meet Mo. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep, 25 for, 25 in favor, 4 opposed, 1 abstention.
25 in favor, 4 opposed, 1 abstention. That motion passes. So we have one more item before I will call a recess to have refreshments and that.
I just asked, I'll finish the minutes so we can approve them.
Yes, that's exactly what I
Okay.
was going to ask you to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We adjourned at 7:20, and don't be jealous. I move to approve the minutes of the RTM education meeting on April 25th.
That's been seconded by Marshall.
Thank you.
So we have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 25th RTM Education Committee. It's been seconded. Is there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, what I'm asking you to do, because it's almost 10. At 10 is the witching hour for us, apparently. So if you would like to take, I would say, come back at 10 of, we could maybe take a crack at it. You know, try to be quick.
The Town Meeting Public Safety Committee Budget Meeting minutes for April 26, 2018. The RTM Public Safety Committee met on April 26, 2018 at the Groton Senior Center. Members present, Representative Pascalini, Richards, Adams, Powers, and Streeter. The quorum was declared. Also present, Police Chief Louis Fazzaro and Deputy Police Chief Paul Gately. Meeting called to order at 6:30 p.m. Account discussed. Account 1024, Public Safety Police. Representative Pascalini moved a figure of $8,347,016, seconded by Representative Powers. At the request of Representative Powers to illustrate the qualifications of the leadership of the Police Department, Chief Fazzaro and Deputy Chief Gately provided brief biographical information about their experience, training, and backgrounds relating to public safety. Chief Fazzaro provided an overview of his budget to include present staffing and manning levels. He explained that the budget he submitted to the town manager was basically a level service budget, and the town manager's reductions take into consideration the current vacancies and the time required for filling the positions during the upcoming year. The chief also explained that late last year, emergency communications, emergency management operations was merged with the Public Safety Police Department, and that the director's position for that operation had been eliminated. The responsibility for that position had been assumed by members of the police department. The increase in personnel services was attributed to scheduled collective bargaining / union pay raises. Chief Fazzaro responded to Representative Richards' questions relating to the opioid crisis. He relayed that the department is still responding to overdoses, and that as of March this year, his department has responded to 11 untimely deaths. Members of the department are directing a considerable amount of their time at looking at the root cause of the problem and providing help to those addicted. There are special units, however, that are addressing the enforcement aspects of the crisis. Vote on the figure presented by Pascalini. Vote 5 in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstain. The motion passed unanimously. I won't continue with the rest of the items that we discussed. However, I will move a figure of $8,347,016.
Second. All right, you have a motion and a second on the floor for account 1024, public safety, $8,347,016. Any questions or discussion? And we do have Chief Fazzaro. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Ma'am.
Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Chief, are you still replacing the Glocks? You had the bag of firing pins that were bent last year?
They've all been replaced. We replaced them during this year, yes.
With 6 hours?
That's right.
What model?
P320.
Isn't that that's a 9mm?
45 caliber.
Oh, okay. I'd read an article where the 9mm SIGs, they had a safety recall. There was a problem with them for a while, so.
They did. They recalled all of them. We've issued out new guns. 6 hour replaced every one of them. So we've got all brand new guns.
Thank you, sir.
So I have a question. I realize that that when your police go to construction sites, they're paid by the entity that's doing the work. Does that overtime that's incurred for construction costs go and increase retirement costs for us?
No, if they're working private duty, it doesn't go towards their retirement.
Okay.
In fact, the town gets a service fee, and they also get $10 per cruiser for a fee that goes to the town.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Hi, Chief. I have a question regarding, it wasn't very long ago when this budget was $6 million, and if you add in benefits, it's like $12 million now. I'm just concerned about the overtime. It looks as though there's about $1 million worth of overtime? Is that correct, and why would that be? I thought we were trying to reduce that.
We
instead
are.
of-
We have been reducing overtime. In fact, officers are getting denied time off, but we, training costs, we put somebody out to a training event, we have to replace them. We've also had officers that are away on extended military leave. We've had several officers that have been injured in the line of duty, so we've replaced them on overtime costs. And part of that figure, I believe you're looking at, also includes the dispatch as part of the overall department budget now.
Oh, it is?
And we do have shortages. We just replaced one dispatcher. We had a retirement earlier in the year. One dispatcher came on board last week, and we still have a vacancy that I'm hoping to fill this budget year.
Okay. Have you given any thought to hiring any community resource officers to replace the staff
Yes.
that we have?
In fact, we have. We've based on staffing, we've been able to put one officer into a dedicated community policing role.
Okay.
Right now, he's away at school. He's attending a school sponsored and paid for by the U.S. Secret Service on computer crimes.
Good.
So when he gets back, he's going to have equipment, training, really state-of-the-art stuff that we can benefit from, not just here, but the region as a whole, because we try to work collaboratively with other departments. Secret Service has sent some other officers from other departments, and they're trying to put together a task force of these officers working together.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Chief, for coming out tonight. So would you say a lot of the costs and increases are because you guys absorbed that emergency management and a lot of that other stuff, it looks like?
Yeah, that's the biggest. That's the biggest impact to the bottom line, because we've taken the emergency communications and emergency management budget and police budget and put them together into one.
And what about community policing? How much would you say that you guys are actually allocating to that to really hit the ground running and being the areas that need, especially areas that are being identified as higher areas for opioid, problems in our community? What are we doing to bridge that gap and have community awareness?
Yeah, our officers, I'd submit to you that our officers were all community-oriented in their policing activities, but until recently, we didn't have a dedicated community policing footprint. We didn't have people that was their sole position. We were able to do that. I did submit in this budget, I believe you'll find a line item that's about $20,000 to replace, that'd be replacement costs, so when we pull an officer out. My hope and expectation is during the summer months, when the school resource officer comes back to the patrol staffing, that we'll take another officer for the summer months and put them out in the community policing roles. As far as addressing the drug and opioid problem, we do have a dedicated squad of people that are working on that we've taken from incumbent positions, detectives, investigators, and supervisors.
Yeah, because I mean, my belief in some of the studies just from criminology that I took myself is that, when you have an increase in community policing, we see a decrease in crime overall, and I would like to see that for this area. My other thing that I'm looking at is how about minority recruiting? How are we faring as a police force?
There's definitely room to grow. Our most recent hire was a minority, is a minority. So we actively pursue the best qualified candidates, and we certainly want to make sure we have a diverse workforce that reflects the community. So we do look at that and consider that during our hiring process.
And one of my last questions is the training. Are we also making sure that we're doing ethical, increasing with all the problems in the community, that minorities from not just African Americans, but minorities in general are experiencing? Are we, including that type of training and increasing the awareness of that? I know that you guys have body cams now and different things like that, and I'm not saying that there's been an increased problem here. That's not why I'm stating that. I just want to make sure that we are on top of that and that we're not going to be the town that's flagged for that type of stuff.
Yeah, we hosted fair and impartial policing in our department last year, something that we're going to do more often. But what I'm hoping to do is get one of our qualified instructors, police post-certified instructors, to be attend a train-the-trainer program in that same subject matter, the fair and impartial policing.
And it would be great to see a female officer also at the high school, and as far as that, not just minority, but also gender roles as well, to have an influence on a female at the high school as well.
Well, as you know, I mean, we've encouraged our officers to stop in every school every day, all of them. So male officers, female officers, they are stopping by. It just happens that the person that we have assigned at the high school is a male officer, but quite often we have other police officers stopping there as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Representative Mello-Miller?
Thank you. I'll keep this brief. I just, with the recent opioid epidemic what are you doing to increase that? And when you're doing that, are we taking people away from other areas?
We've, you know, to answer your question, yes, we are taking them away from other areas. We have officers that are assigned to investigative roles. What we've done is we've repurposed them and retasked them to specifically address some of the narcotics problems. But we look at it as a two-pronged approach, not just the enforcement aspect, but also providing education and information to people so that they can get help that they need. You know, we want to make sure we're not just arresting people. We want to provide them with the avenue to get some help. And we've been very effective at doing that in partnership with the Community Speaks Out and some other community-based organizations.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any more hands in the air, so I think we might be ready to have a vote on this. We have account 1024, public safety, $8,347,016. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? You're amazing. That it's unanimous. So please continue. Let me just take can I take a sense of the body to see, it is 10 o'clock. We have 2 more CIP accounts on this. We can plow through. We do have, you know, guests from the town to meet with us. So can I have a soft show of hands of who would like to stay? All right, thank you. Please continue.
Item 2 discussed by the committee, CIP 7G, Public Safety Radio Upgrade Replacement. Representative Streeter moved a figure of $1 million, seconded by Representative Adams. Chief Fazaro explained that the present system is outdated and that there are many dead spot areas within the town where the radios do not function or are inoperable. The situation creates a general safety hazard to the officers as well as the public. The department has explored 3 options to provide a cost-effective radio solution, as well as providing enhanced law enforcement services, as well as eliminating the safety issue to the officers and the public. After conducting their research, the department administration has determined and recommends purchasing the State of Connecticut Division of Statewide Emergency Telecommunications Motorola System. The chief verbally provided detailed information to the committee about the system. The chief also provided committee members with documentation relating to the proposed systems and its cost. At the request of Chairman Streeter, it was recommended and approved that these documents also be provided to all RTM members. Vote of the committee, 5 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstained. I move $1 million.
All right, we have, this is Public Safety Radio Upgrade Replacement, 7G CIP, $1 million been moved and seconded. Is there any questions or discussion? Representative McDermott?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Chief, I'm a proponent of this and have been for quite a while, particularly after the police evaluation study came out in 2013. But after rereading the page 229 or 230, I guess it is it correct that we can talk to Stonington and Amtrak and people like that, but we can't talk to the city or Groton Long Point? I thought Groton Long Point was part of the program.
If we go with this system, this proposal under the state, the town of Stonington just adopted this.
Okay.
We would be able to talk to them. We would be able to talk with state resources, some of the other law enforcement agencies in Connecticut that utilize the state system, including Amtrak, some of the we would be on an 800 megahertz frequency. Groton Long Point, I've already talked to Chief Nixon about it. He's aware of it. They're on our system now. They would remain on our system. They would need to upgrade some of their mobile units and portable units. The city's on a different frequency, so we would not be talking with them on the radio system itself.
What is it going to take to get the city on the right megahertz?
You'd have to discuss that with the city leadership.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Representative Streeter?
I'd like to just provide my own personal notes that I put together. I'd like to strongly recommend approval of the CIP. During the Public Safety Committee's review of this proposal, the chief provided the committee with what I felt was eye-opening documents relating to the CIP. The committee felt it would be extremely important to provide these documents to each member of the RTM, and hopefully you have reviewed them. Look at the documents you have been provided, especially the colored map showing the radio area. I asked the chief tonight to bring this chart. I want to show you this chart. This is the enlargement of what you see in there. Notice the areas in white. These are dead zones where there are interruptions and oftentimes no communications available between the police officer and police headquarters. The white areas on the right on the drawing are Route 184, where many businesses as well as homes are located. The area on the on the left in white is the submarine base, is where the submarine base is located. This lack of communications is, to me, unacceptable and a safety issue not only to the police officers, but to the public. Copies of a memorandum from Chief Fazzaro to the town manager were also included in that package. I'd like to read two short comments the chief made in that memorandum. Quote, "The radio system is a daily concern for our department. It is antiquated, prone to failure, costly to repair. The equipment is obsolete, and parts are difficult to find, and most importantly, an increasing safety issue to our officers." Further, quote, "Indeed, the radio system is expensive, but there have been virtually no significant investment in meaningful improvements or maintenance over the past few decades. This lack of investment had put us in the place that we are in now. We, the town government, have kicked the can down the road for too long. We must act now to provide our police and community with the tools necessary to provide effective public safety." Those are my notes. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those with us. Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and I appreciate you sending out the documents. That's a lot of white on that map. I mean, that's actually frightening, and when I reviewed it and actually seeing it on the bigger board, that's very concerning to me. I know that it, like Representative Streeter just said, it is a big number, but I also was told or heard at one of the other meetings where this was discussed that if we do not jump into this opportunity, the cost of this system, and maybe Chief can speak to this, is, I thought it might have been double, if not triple, this cost. Yeah. And so I just want to encourage everybody that this is something that we need to get into, and I'm hoping the city will follow.
If I may, I can clarify some of that.
Please do.
We've been working with a couple of different vendors looking at some possibilities. There's another regional system in this part of the state. We've talked to them. The original cost estimates I was getting on a radio system were between $2.5 million to $3.4 million. You're probably asking yourself, where's the delta? What makes this a better system or more economically feasible than something else? Here's the reason, simply put. We have 5 tower sites, and as you can see, I don't know if you can hear me, I can speak loudly, but we have 5 tower sites right now within the town of Groton for the police department, located within Groton proper. If we were to go to this system, we would leverage technology that already exists on the state system in East Lyme, Ledger, North Stonington, and now in Stonington, plus with a tower site at our facility. So we go from 5 that we're maintaining down to 1. The reason why this is important for the state is because they're going to get some benefit out of this too. They're going to utilize the tower we have at our police department to enhance their coverage, give them a little bit better capabilities. There's also something called the core, which is really the brains of the radio system. Every radio system has it. That's the most expensive part. We're getting that access for free from the state system. Why are they doing this? Well, really because they have to. They probably should have done it years ago, and they acknowledge that, allowing other municipalities to join in. That's what they're doing right now. So Stonington was the first. I'm hoping that we'll be close behind. But again, there's other stuff that we looked at from other vendors. These are expensive propositions. We're not just talking about the stuff at our building and the infrastructure, we're also talking about replacing some really outdated technology. And I did, if I may, I can kind of.
I just wanted to ask one more question, and then I'll be done. The antenna, if I remember, was structurally sound, right? We don't need to replace
It
that?
is. We had to do a study of that
Yeah.
because it was built 20 years ago, the antenna at our facility. Standards have changed, so we had to do an analysis. The analysis that was done by an engineer came back and said we could add more antenna capacity.
But some of the radios that you guys currently have are compatible, but others were not. And that's the other thing that I heard at the meeting that I thought was really important for everybody to hear, was that we would have to purchase additional radios so that they could, anyway, I'll let you speak.
That's right. Yeah, well, this is the radio a portion of our officers carry right now. It's 20-ish years old, maybe a little bit older. These are not made anymore. This is called analog. So think about your old digital, the first flip phone you had when we started getting cell phones. It was an analog phone, right? Now with iPhones and Droids and all that kind of stuff, we don't use those phones anymore. They're on an analog system. This is analog. This will not work on a new system. However, over the last 2 years, as we've needed to replace radios, and again, we can't replace this because the parts no longer exist for it, we've purchased some new ones. And these are just a couple of the examples of the portable radios our officers have. So about half of them still have these out in the field. The ones that we've replaced them with are either this version or a much smaller amount of these. And the difference between these two radios is this radio only talks on one frequency. It talks to RPD on our radio system. It talks on our current radio system, but it will talk on the new one. You know, there's an upgrade that we have to do to them, which is a technology thing. They flash it. But this talks on 800 megahertz. It's backwards compatible, meaning it works on our existing system, but it would work on our future system. This radio this is actually 3 radios in one. So you were asking me before, can you talk to the city? This radio allows us the ability to talk to a variety of different departments because it speaks at the 800 megahertz level, which is what we have, but it also speaks on VHF and UHF. So it's called multiband, but for every one of these I buy, I can buy 2.5 of these. So this is an expensive radio. So some of our supervisors have this. Our supervisor vehicles have the mobile version of this. But the bulk of our officers get this radio because there's really no need for everybody to talk on every frequency. Does that make sense? So I want the supervisors to be able to. If we're responding to something big and we're working with other agencies, I expect the supervisor to be there and they'll be able to communicate with whomever the other department is.
Thank you. Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Chief, can you just explain to us, like, you know, each officer has a gun, they have a vest. Explain to everyone that's pretty much the lifeline for the officer out in the field.
It is. I mean, that's exactly right. The radio is the lifeline for officers when they're involved in something. If they get into a physical altercation, or they're assisting someone maybe that's suffering from medical distress, this is the biggest tool they've got in their toolbox. We issue officers a lot of equipment, but this is their one way of communicating back to headquarters or with brother and sister law enforcement officers to get the help they need or bring additional resources to a scene. So we do have areas, as the first map illustrates, where we have some very weak coverage or no coverage at all. Some of our areas that are most popular during the summer, like Mystic, we have spotty reception at best. So being able to communicate is important, and our officers also know there are certain areas where if they stop a car or if they respond to something, they're going to have weak coverage at best, if any coverage at all. We have had some incidents where our officers have been involved in something and they were unable to use their radios, so they had to resort to either cell phones or hardline calls to communicate, and clearly that's not ideal.
Thank you. Representative Richards?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to clarify on the CIP. It states that there are, for FYE 19 and 20, funds being requested $1,025,000 per year to purchase new mobile and portable radios. Later, it's saying the town manager recommends $1 million based on further pricing from the state and vendors. It looks like we're talking about $1 million will cover all of this, and we won't be requested to fund another $1 million next year for this, correct?
One thing we discussed at the
at the council is 1 million is a bare bones budget. We could potentially run into issues. If everything comes as planned, with this type of level of project, you can run into overages. What we talked about at the council is with the CAD project, which is also a high priority, but we would not, assuming that's funded, we would not proceed with that until we knew this was all the way through. So if we had to, we'd come back to the RTM and ask to put that off for a year and transfer funds into this. Hopefully $1 million's gonna be enough, but I don't want you to be surprised by anything. If everything goes on schedule, yes, it's enough, but you can run into technical issues along the way. It's a big project.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Whitehouse?
So just to verify, this will eliminate all the dead spots in the entire town and give us complete coverage?
No radio system will do that 100%. This is, the proposal that we've got is 95% coverage. That's what they base it on. Someone's in a basement, they're in a cellar with their portable radio. This is a lot weaker signal than what comes out of our patrol car radios, so there's better coverage with mobile radios than there is with portables. There will be, every system has voids. Not to the extent that we have right now, but because of weather conditions, because of coverage, there's just things that are beyond our control. But what we're being told is you'll have 95% coverage throughout the town. The other important factor of this is that our officers will also have coverage out of town. Why is that important? Police officers don't always stay in their own jurisdiction, and I'll give you an example, and I gave this to the council a couple weeks ago. We had an officer that went out to pick up a prisoner. We had a warrant for her. She goes to pick the prisoner up. He has a heart attack in the cruiser on the way back. Between Troop B and Montville and our PD. She could call other agencies with the radio if we have coverage there. And as you can see from this one, what Motorola is telling us is we're going to get coverage not just in Groton, but really throughout Connecticut, but it's based on the Troop B radio system. That's where these towers are. So we would have 95% coverage in all of those areas. So.
And we're able to go down to one tower because we can also reach the towers in surrounding towns. Is that?
It's part of a network. They're interconnected. So it's 800 megahertz. It's the wave. I'm not a real technical guy, but it's shorter distances. So you have to have that network support. So that's what we would have that. Right now we have it on the existing radio system, but we're maintaining 5 sites for our department, for just police. There's also sites that fire departments have as well, but we only, based on their proposal, what they've given to me is we would need 1 site and it would be at the police department.
And how resilient is this in terms of disaster, power outage, et cetera? You still have radio service?
That's one of the benefits. For instance, if something were to happen, let's just say we were having a catastrophic failure at our building for some reason. We could relocate to Stonington, we could relocate to another department that has the state system. We could go to on the state, we could go to Troop E, we could broadcast out of there. And vice versa. They could use our facility if they needed to, if they had a catastrophic failure. There's redundancies built in, which I think is extremely important. And they also have a lot of technical support that comes along with it. Having worked for the state, I know what those capabilities are. In fact, even since we've gone down this road of looking at the system, they've provided us with a lot of insight and advice and visits from some of their technical experts that have come to the department to look at our facilities, our equipment. I can tell you some of them they were pretty impressed with. We have some robust backup equipment at the police department, generators. We have a uninterrupted power source, which is really a battery system, so that if you lose power at the building before the generator kicks on, you have to have something in between. We have that does need to be upgraded. But we've got some pretty good capabilities, and as far as redundancy goes, I think this is a home run because we're leveraging other capabilities that exist in the state already. And through this process, they've been with us with the proposal. They've looked at everything. They've given a lot of free technical advice. I think having weighed a couple of different options, this is probably the best solution we could have right now.
Yeah, it sounds like a great option that you've researched very well, and so I'll definitely be supporting it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm going to talk about the emotional side of this. If I had a policeman or woman in my family, I would want to know that they are coming home after their shift safe the way they left. They've been, as Representative Streeter said, they've been requesting this for a long time. I don't know the history and why they haven't received it, but for many reasons, I'm voting yes for this.
Representative Mello Miller?
I'd like to call the question.
Say it louder so we can
I'd
hear.
like to call the question.
Thank you. We have a motion to call the question. It's been seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, 29 in favor, 1 opposed. Any abstentions? No, that motion passes. So we have a number on the floor. It's $1 million. This is CIP 7G, Public Safety Radio Upgrade and Replacement, $1 million. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. Thank you.
We have one more item. I'm sure we can get through it tonight. Item CIP 7F, Public Safety CAD/RMS Integration. Representative Pasqualini moved a figure of $320,000, seconded by Representative Powers. Chief Azzaro explained that the town police present systems of recording and documenting information, which are the computer-aided dispatch, CAD, and the record management system, RMS, are not compatible, and a considerable amount of officers' time is spent duplicating and inputting information from one system onto the other. The funds requested in this CIP are to purchase a software package to integrate the two systems. It was pointed out that in October 2017, the integration of these two systems was identified as the top priority in the Police Safety IT Master Plan. Committee vote, 5 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstained. Madam Moderator, I move a figure of $320,000.
All right, we have a motion for $320,000 for Public Safety CAD RMS integration. It's been seconded. Are there any questions or comments? What? Oh, let's do the minutes. Should we do the minutes first? No, let's keep doing this.
You read it.
Yeah. But we have a motion on the floor now.
I said they were good minutes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know what you were saying. Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Once again, this is about transparency and safety in our community, and making sure the proper information is accurately documented. Just from my own experience, again, knowing from taking criminal justice, from the point of the encounter to the time that it's actually submitted, there's a lot lost. And when you're going back and reading, when I had a fender bender and I was rereading the cops, handwriting, and things get lost in translation, who the inputter is versus who wrote the, this is just a no-brainer. I mean, this is where we need to be. This is fair and accurate reporting that we all deserve as citizens, as offenders, as taxpayers. This is just, and I do feel that by implementing this system, it should decrease those overtime hours that the officers are needing to input this data. Thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? We have $320,000 on the floor for Public Safety CAD RMS integration. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. So now we have...
All right, now we go for the long one. Committee adjourned at 7:55 p.m. I make a motion to accept the minutes as read.
No, is there any discussion?
Who seconded the minutes, please?
Please slow down a little. Thank you. All in favor, any discussion? Representative Kwiatkowski, is this on the minutes? Okay, then please hold it. All right, are there any points on these minutes? No? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No? That motion passes. So Representative Kwiatkowski, you had a question?
Thank you. I have a procedural and a technical question regarding a motion to amend a vote. If someone were to make a motion to amend a vote, say for the city of Groton, that would be 1090 for that budget, would there be a way to amend it so that they would include, could include equipment so they could communicate on the same frequency as the Groton Police, the Groton Town Police? Is there any way that there's, I don't think I'm saying it right, but you get what I'm trying to say? Can we amend the vote for the city police so that they could also use the money that the town gives them to,
We can't go over the number that's given to us by the town manager or the council, right? So
Right.
we voted that in at the same number. So we
Right.
can't go higher than that
no,
as
but
an
I meant,
RTM.
could we condition that money so that they?
No, I don't believe we can.
Oh, okay, okay. I just thought maybe we could get them on the same frequency.
You know, just like anything, we can't condition, we vote on a line item, we can't tell departments what to spend it on. The same would go for the city, is my understanding. So, anyway, are there any other questions, or shall we recess? Representative Marshall?
I'd actually recommend a informal straw vote to do anything for the public works. Like if
We don't have any public works people here. to
I
answer.
understand that, but we don't necessarily need them to vote on the items that people have already read ahead on.
Yeah, I think.
If people aren't willing to say, that's fine, but I was recommending we do a straw vote to informally.
Okay, all in
because-
favor of working on public works, please raise your hand. All right, that motion fails. So,
My concern is that we're going to have to schedule another day,
no,
so.
we're putting it on the 15th. If you read your email from the town clerk, we've already rescheduled it.
I understand that, but there's more things are just piling up. That's my concern.
There's been a motion to recess, and it's been seconded by Representative Frickman. All in favor? Aye.